Kirby Air Ride, Kirby's first plunge into the racing game genre that has been exclusively locked to the GameCube since 2003. And we're finally getting a sequel for the Switch 2 in November. You'll be awakened from your deep slumber soon, my son. Air Ride is so much more than just a racing game though, and has a few playable modes, most notably City Trial, where you roam around a small city and collect power-ups to beef up your star, or machine as they're called, to compete in a random minigame at the end. There's also a checklist for every game mode where you have to clear certain objectives, some unlocking new machines, characters, and Kirby colors to name a few. These are hard to finish, or at least it was for me growing up. But that could also be because I paid no mind to them and spent most of my time in City Trial having a blast. Though doing that made me miss out on a good amount of what this game really has to offer. There's characters I never got to play as, air ride tracks I never bothered with, and a top ride mode? Just kidding, it's actually pretty fun. But I never really experienced a lot of the actual air riding. And what better way to rectify that than trying to beat every track with the least optimal machine, along with one win in City Trial for old time's sake. So what machine would that be? Well, there's really only one that comes to mind. Presenting the Bulk Star that's got a big ol' engine in the back. This thing will not move unless you charge up your boost meter, and when it's all gone, you'll gradually slow down until you reach a halt, where you'll have to fuel it back up again. Even with this, it actually has really good top speed, but underperforms pretty much everywhere else. The Bulk Star is otherwise really tanky, and a great option to use in City Trial where you can enhance its stats. But since you constantly have to stop and charge to get it to move, it's probably one of the worst selections you can make for a regular race. So, let's see if you can beat every track in Kirby Air Ride only using the Bulk Star. Here are the rules I set for this challenge to make things interesting but fair. Not only will I be using the Bulk Star, but everyone I race against will too. It'll be a complete stomp with other machines in the mix. I'll also be maxing out mine and everyone else's handicaps for increased speed, and setting the CPU's difficulty to 9. This apparently will make them faster than me, even though we're all using the same machine. All of the races are set to defaults with enemies included, except for one track which I'll talk about later. Kirby Air Ride differs a bit more than your typical mascot racers, so I'll go over some of the more standout mechanics before I begin the challenge. The biggest one being the ability to attack and slow down other racers by spinning your joystick for a quick spin attack, or by using Kirby's copy abilities gained by swallowing certain enemies you find throughout each track. Almost every copy ability is used differently, such as pressing A to shoot fire in front of you, or wiggling your joystick to charge up your plasma for a huge blast. But for this challenge, there's two specific abilities that will be essential to our victory. Those abilities are the Wing and Wheel. With Wing, we transform and ditch our machine for a few seconds, losing the ability to boost, but in return, we can fly in the air and move continuously without having to stop and charge. The same goes for the Wheel, except instead of flight, we gain more speed and can charge at the cost of decent handling. Speaking of the charge, not only is it built up by holding A, but you can also gain more by holding down on the joystick when gliding in the air. Every machine's meter charges at a different rate on the ground and while gliding, except for the Wagon Star, which doesn't charge. Each machine operates differently and has something unique about it, so it's good to try them all out and see which one may fit best for you. Other than that, races are singular, with whomever places first being the winner. No Grand Prix, just one and done. So I began not with the Fantasy Meadows race, but actually taking a little bit of time to mess around as the Bulk Star in Time Trial, and watching a tutorial on how to play to freshen my memory. Once I felt good enough and had established my rule set after some trial and error, I then started at Fantasy Meadows, specifically as Brown Kirby, because it's the most fun you can have while racing in the game. Off the bat, you can clearly see that the CPUs have an unfair advantage over me in the speed department, though it's still somewhat the equivalent of watching 4 Lightning Larry Lucianos race against each other. Fantasy Meadows is short, which is good, but it also comes at a cost. It's bone dry aside from one boost pad and a few spots you can glide off of to keep your speed going. There's a few enemies that spawn around the track, but none of their abilities are that helpful since you'll usually be too far behind to swing your sword or shoot fire at anyone. Sometimes you will find a microphone ability, which will attack those within a wide radius when used, but this will also knock them in the air, giving them a glide opportunity, so it's better to avoid it. I got smoked in the first race. That Kirby had to have been cheating and using turbo fuel in his Bulk Star, and he must have passed it along to everyone else but me, because that first loss started a snowball effect of defeats, hardly ever coming close to anything other than maybe third place with luck involved. Playing through this track more and understanding the better points of when to charge and when to coast made for some improvements, but no matter what, when that third lap hits, the CPUs start racing around this track crazy style, seemingly leaving no hope for first place no matter how well you play. Now, I say seemingly, because there is one thing that could help me win. When Kirby swallows 2 enemies with copy abilities at the same time, you're given a random roulette of all the available abilities in the game, offering the chance of landing on one that wouldn't be found in this track, like the wing or wheel. While that could be my ace in the hole, getting 2 enemies to line up together at the perfect moment will be left up to chance, and stopping to wait for the right opportunity might waste too much time. So I put that idea back in my pocket and pressed on in this 1 minute and 30-second average race for nearly an hour and a half. Throughout my journey, I pulled off a few second place finishes, of course with first place being leaps and bounds ahead of me, but also took notice of the CPUs doing something that I thought might help me win. They're able to get a crazy amount of in-air time when going off of even the smallest of ramps. If they can do it, surely I can too. Well, that's not necessarily the case, or maybe I was doing it wrong. A few members of my chat instructed me to flick the joystick down at the right moment before making my jump, and it should lift me higher off the ground than one while holding down on the joystick. But it felt like I just couldn't seem to get this trick down the intended way, though it did appear that I was getting slightly more air than before. But compared to the CPUs, we're talking NBA players versus one guy who probably wouldn't be able to touch the net. Now from here, it pretty much felt like it was going to come down to getting a random wing or wheel ability. But who even knows what the odds are of that happening? Oh, it counts, baby, it counts. Holy guacamole, I cannot believe how well that played out. Pure cinema at its finest. Celestial Valley is next up on the list. This track has a lot more to offer our John Deere jalopy. It starts off with 2 boost pads in the beginning and then a ton of cliffs and ramps to go off of. Even the smallest bit of in-air time will increase our speed and keep us moving, so it's already looking much more promising than Fantasy Meadows. After crossing the bridge and making a big leap, we venture through a tunnel, and on the other end, we find a narrow path with some enemies and 2 vines you can hop onto with enough air. From there, we go up and down a waterfall and hit a huge vine that carries us into the next lap. With all the things around to help keep up the pace, it seemed like another luck-based win would be right out the window. Or at least that's what I believed for a brief moment. The CPUs rampaged. That was pretty rough. 11 seconds behind. Almost always achieving huge leaps in the air, accessing the higher tunnels with rails, hitting vines for a quick grind past me while I had to stop and put more gas in the tank, and topping it off by landing on the near end of the final vine where I could usually only ever hit the lower half. And it gets even worse when entering the final lap. Once again, regular racing with the bulk star just won't cut it. But here, we have access to an enemy called Flappy, who gives us the wing ability, so that should be able to carry me to victory just like before. Except there's a catch. Flappies almost never seem to spawn in an area where they're the most useful, at least when it comes to a full bulk star race. The best place you'll usually see them is right before you fly into the air and enter the tunnels, and while it occasionally can help you get to the upper 2 tunnels which are faster than the one below, your ability will usually run out before you can reach them. You may occasionally find a Flappy flying around other areas of the track, but if you're me, you'll probably be too far behind for them to make a big difference. So it was back to the lab again. There had to be something else I could do to beat these guys. I was told of a method where you won't lose as much speed if you charge into a turn, but that didn't do a whole lot here. I tried getting small glides off of the tiniest ramps and some hills, then I tried grinding on the ropes of the bridge, which I was surprised to find out you could do, and then I tried using other abilities around me to attack the CPUs and other nearby enemies, but none of these things were that effective. A big issue for me were the vines after the tunnels. The CPUs always got enough air to ride them, and they're a quick shortcut through the narrow path. More often than not, any lead I had was lost to these vines, and I could hardly ever reach them without the help of the wing ability, since my speed was usually too low to get enough air. Even with enough speed, reaching the vines proved to be a challenge, but eventually, I'd find a way that worked somewhat consistently. With enough speed and moving Kirby to the far left as you fly off the ramp, you'll be able to reach the first vine, which will carry you to the second. I don't know how or why it works this way, but it reignited my drive to get this win, because at this point, I had been in Celestial Valley for over 2 hours with almost nothing to show for it aside from this little technique. Unfortunately, this would only help so much. The CPUs are still way too fast, but they're also not perfect. They'll attack each other and occasionally fly out of bounds. Maybe if they slip up just enough, I can get the upper hand.
Oh my god, get...
I was shocked because not only did I miss the second vine, but I also won the race by a little over half a second. One slight mistake or extra time spent charging and it would have been over. I've had my fair share of close calls in my challenge runs, and this is definitely going in the books as one of the hardest races I've ever done. And it's only the second track out of 9. If the rest of the game is like this, I'm in deep trouble. Sky Sands would end my worries swiftly, because less than 10 seconds in, I saw a gorgeous wheel emblem in the distance. After setting my sights on this beauty, I knew that everything was going to be okay. The wheel definitely didn't handle anywhere near as well as the wing ability, but it was effective. This track offered some other advantage opportunities as well. There's a shortcut you can hit by pressing A on the switch here, and you can ramp off of this crab to access a boost pad. Also, the CPU seemed to struggle around these U-turns, coming at a complete stop when they're over. In some sections, they still held the high ground over me, but compared to the first 2 tracks, that was small potatoes.
Easy, dude. Easy money.
For comparison, it only took about 10 minutes to get this win. At Frozen Hillside, there were hardly any hills, but plenty of U-turns. And wouldn't you know it, the CPUs hated this track. They cannot handle these turns, but I could. It was refreshing to have the shoe on the other foot. Well, for a majority of the race anyway. Near the end of the final lap, one of the Kirbys caught up with me and took first place. It was a good thing that there were boost pads right by the finish line, which I happily helped myself to.
Nice, first try.
Now we're going into the exact opposite of ice in Magma Flows, racing in a volcanic hellscape. But hey, look, a Flappy. It's a big sigh of relief to see these fellas hanging around. This track has a few branching paths, most notably with these rails. They all take you to a ledge where you can fly off and access a separate platform with a boost pad on it, which I have no hope of reaching. But I get to glide for a moment. The best rails to take are the right and left ones, since they'll bring you to a higher point than the middle one, maximizing your glide time. There's also boost pads in the corners of this area that give a huge speed boost, and those can't be missed. I took 3rd place on my first try and followed that up with a good handful of resets before finally reaching first. Overall, this track didn't have any crazy difficult moments or segments to overcome. The CPUs are fast, but they usually won't get too far ahead of you here. Just be sure not to miss these side boosts. You're gonna need them. Up next is Beanstalk Park. This track has the most rails and shortcuts out of anything I've played through so far, one of which takes you on this Ferris wheel and puts you through this curly path, which unfortunately is not so great for the bulk star. Skipping the Ferris wheel puts us on a much more favorable path, so that'll be the most ideal way to go. The plentiful vines and rails make this track one that requires very few charge stops. There's tons of Flappies around to help with that as well. I was able to stick around 1st and 2nd place throughout my attempts, but as it goes, the CPUs always found a way to beat me in the final lap.
Dude, I got stuck. What?
Hitting certain vines and rails were essential. There's this rail around the start that gives you a huge skip, but unless there's a Flappy nearby, you probably won't get to it. Maneuvering past the Ferris wheel, there's a thick vine that leads us to this upper platform, which has a rail attached to it that gives us another helpful shortcut. From there, just play it smart and ride the final rails to the end.
I get first. What is the time on that? We tied. It doesn't matter. Give me first.
Well, hey, it says first place and put me above everyone else, so I'll gladly accept this as a win. Machine Passage. It has this partial industrial bass vibe to it, but some sections have pinball influences, so I don't know what it wants to be. This track is heavy with tight turns, and that was great news for me since I knew the CPUs would be lacking. I got 2nd place on my first try, though I wasn't anywhere near first. Then, after resetting, I was 1st place on the last lap, minding my own business, until I ran out of gas in the worst spot with everyone right behind me. However, after filling up my bulk star with some non-environmentally friendly diesel fuel and cutting a few corners, I went from last place all the way back to 1st. The 8th track is called Checker Nights, and it started off with a sweet, all too familiar sound. This is actually the alternate music, which we'll play randomly. In fact, every track in this game has an alternate theme. It's so cool. Anyways, Checker Nights is one of the longest tracks in the game. Then again, when you're riding with the big engine that could, almost every track is long. First, they put you through a colorful checkered area, and there's a little shortcut that opens up in this rock here. Then, after sliding down the rails, we're sent to the dark version of a Sonic 2 special stage. But the fun doesn't stop there. After failing to get the Chaos Emerald, we get sent up into the air and back down for some twisty turns. After clearing those, we have some more tight turns to make, ending the lap with a straight shot through this humble abode, though there is a switch you can hit to send up a platform to block others from speeding through. All of this wrapped up in a 3.5-minute long adventure. It may sound like a lot, but this was a fun track to play through, and it was full of ways for our bulky star to get around. We got wheel and wing abilities here too, which makes the experience that much better. I almost beat this race on my first try, but what saved me in Fantasy Meadows would lead to my demise in Checker Nights.
Oh, you...
I nearly pulled off a win soon after with a sick wall jump in the last lap, but the CPUs just wouldn't let me have it. No, they'd rather see me win in the silliest way possible.
Oh my... My... Holy sh... Wait. Yay!
That brings us to Nebula Belt, the final track in the game. It's also the only unlockable track, requiring you to race 100 laps in air ride mode to get it. Here we're in outer space where no one can hear my cries for help because this track is the worst one of them all for the bulk star. Its whole gimmick is that you pass through these question marks for a random ability, so you may get something good or not. There's a handful of these spots throughout the track alongside a few ramps, and that's it. This track is completely flat, so we're just kind of stuck to charging up and going, praying that the right abilities will hit. So if we don't consistently get the wing or wheel, it's just over. The CPUs have the advantage in speed, and there's nothing that can really help us otherwise. I fought hard, and came close to beating this track only once in an hour of trying. You might say that the same could have been said for Fantasy Meadows and Celestial Valley, but in those tracks, I had enemies, terrain, and rails to work with. Here, I got the endless void of nothing. So with this track being so RNG heavy and against our favor, I decided to break my own rules and set the lap counter to 1. I'm sure the comment section is gonna love that, but hear me out. If you can beat this in 1 lap, you can surely do it in 2, but it seems kinda pointless to suffer through a race that's only reliant on getting the best abilities, especially when the CPUs can get them too and just beat you regardless. I believe that some small exceptions are okay when you're practically left in the hands of chance, and I don't want you to think that making this 1 lap made things too much easier. This was still a huge pain in the ass to get through. I definitely did not get what I needed most of the time, but maybe, just maybe, I didn't need to have a pair of wings or turn into a huge wheel to win.
Hold! Yes! Yes! Let's go! I don't care if it's not 2 laps. It doesn't matter. It's RNG. Who cares?
And there you have it. Every track in Kirby Air Ride completed only using the bulk star. Now we can finally get onto the main event. 1 completed city trial game using our big bulky boy. Only there's a problem that I totally forgot about. Machines randomly spawn throughout the city and nothing is guaranteed. But I knew the bulk star would find its way back to me. It just had to. So I searched and searched around until I eventually saw that a red Kirby had stolen my ride.
Unhand that! Unhand that, sir!
I followed around and tried to smack him off, but he was stuck to it like glue. My efforts would not be in vain, and soon enough, I'd be riding that hog once again.
Aha!
Time was of the essence, and I grabbed as many power-ups as I could to prepare for the random competition at the end. It was so much fun slamming through all the boxes, roaming around the city. I felt like a kid again. And when it was over, I snapped back to reality because I hardly got any power-ups.
Oh my god, we're so weak.
Then proceeded to get Exodia obliterated in Destruction Derby 3.
Oh my god, I can't move! I already died.
So that was terrible, but I'd be in for a real treat after trying once more. Right after spawning in, I turned around and saw my poor beaten down boy waiting for me. With nearly 5 minutes to gather as much as I could, I wasn't gonna let him down again. Though I kinda did because I didn't do much better stat-wise than my first run through. But our health started out pretty low and I didn't want to risk him blowing up. So I frantically tried to find food, which ate up some time. But I wasn't gonna let that discourage me, and I gave it everything I had in Kirby Melee too. By the end, you wouldn't believe how close it was.
Did none of them kill anything? What the f? Okay.
Well, since that's over with, I can make my cut to the end of the video where I say that you can beat every track in Kirby Air Ride only using the Bulk Star. Thank you all so much for watching. The Bulk Star is certainly a big pain in the ass to play with on the Air Ride tracks, something I definitely would not recommend to anyone. It's kind of wild that the bulk of this challenge was overcoming the first 2 tracks. I'm so glad I won't have to put myself through that again. I had been itching to make a video on this game for a while now, and I hope you liked it. I'm eagerly awaiting the release of Air Riders, and can almost guarantee you'll see me streaming it day one. Be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Also, I stream all of my challenge runs live on my Twitch channel and here on YouTube. If you'd like to check that out, be sure to subscribe or follow me on Twitch. The link to my Twitch channel, along with links to my other social media accounts, can be found in the description. If there's a challenge run you'd like to see, you can also check out the description for a direct link where you can submit your ideas. Thanks again for watching, everyone. See you in the next video.
Do what you want because a pirate is free. You are a pirate.